update this August Assembly on the monitoring and implementation of the annual budget relating to government expenditures execution as at end December 2021. Honorable Speaker, the total government local funds expenditure as at end December 2021 was $20.83 billion, indicating a 6% increase in expenditure in comparison to the end of 2020. A breakdown of this expenditure also indicates 24% was spent on other recurrent expenses, whilst expenditure on personnel emolument amounted to 22% of total expenditure for the period. Meanwhile, expenditure on subventions was equivalent to about 18% of total expenditure, while debt service and capital development expenditure accounted for 22% and 18% of total expenditure, respectively. Other recurrent expenditure decreased from $5.7 billion in 2020 to $4.96 billion in 2021. This represents a decrease of 14% in other recurrent expenditure, with only 85% of its approved budget spent over the period. Honorable Speaker, personnel emolument PEs increased by 12% over the period, rising from $4.07 billion in 2020 to $4.56 billion in 2021. Debt service also increased by 8% year-on-year to $4.53 billion from $4.2 billion in December 2020. However, capital expenditure registered the highest increase by expenditure class, registering a 72% increase in comparison to 2020. In essence, it increased from $2.22 billion in 2020 to $3.83 billion in 2021, mainly as a result of commitments on roads and bridges. Honorable Speaker, the top three spending ministries during the period under review are Ministry of Basic Education, Basic and Secondary Education, $2.83 billion, Ministry of Transport, Works and Infrastructure, $2.76 billion, and Ministry of Health, $1.69 billion. Honorable Speaker, in terms of absorptive rates, about 40% of the ministries, departments, and agencies absorbed more than 100% of their initial approved budgets for 2021. This includes the Independent Electoral Commission, IEC, whose budget absorption rate was 124%, mainly due to expenditure on voter registration and election activities, which was made possible through the Supplementary Appropriation, SAP. Similarly, the Ministry of Transport, Works and Infrastructure absorbed 40% more than its approved budget, whilst the Ministry of Information and Communication Infrastructure absorbed 39% more than the initial approved budgets. The over-absorption for Ministry of Information and Communication can be attributed to expenditure on subventions, GRT elections-related activities, contributions to international organizations, and ICT infrastructure. Honorable Speaker, the top spending budget line items are subventions, $2.91 billion, roads and bridges, $2.19 billion, operating costs, $520 million, settlement of confirmed debts, $516 million, travel expenses, $319 million, food and food services, $301 million, vehicles, $291 million, school improvement grants, $289 million, general pension benefits, $244 million, and purchase of fuel and lubricants, $228 million. Expenditure on roads and bridges amounted to $2.19 billion, which represents a 133 absorptive rate in comparison to the initial approved budget of $1.6 billion. Meanwhile, absorption for food and food services was 111% for the period and was mainly due to the expansion of the school feeding program under the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education and Feeding of Security Forces. Honorable Speaker, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs does monitor the annual budget. The ministry monitors budget execution performance of all MDAs on a monthly basis and publishes fiscal data on the website of the ministry for transparency purposes. Fiscal monitoring missions and site visits are also conducted to assess progress relating to implementation of budget activities funded by both government and development partners. Honorable Speaker, as we are still recovering from the impact of COVID-19 pandemic and to consolidate our reforms within the public finance landscape, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs intends to work with all sectors to implement prudent fiscal policies in line with our national development objectives. Furthermore, we will also continue to collaborate with all our partners in government to ensure more resources are made available to critical sectors, including health, education, and security sectors. Honorable Speaker, managing public resources is a sacred trust, and we take it very seriously as the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs. We are also aware that this August Assembly believes the same and remains committed to playing a critical role in this process. It is therefore our fervent hope that our partners, the government of the Republic of the Gambia through the Ministry of Finance and Economic Affairs and the National Assembly will continue to collaborate and deliver to the Gambian people the sustainable development outcomes they richly deserve. Thank you very much, Honorable.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for the statement and meeting the requirements of the standing orders of the National Assembly. And on that note, may I invite any honorable member who wishes to take part, to ask a question on the statement to do so. Notwithstanding, I will reiterate that the question time cumulatively shall not be more than 1 hour, and it has to be directly linked to the statement delivered. Thank you very much for your attention. Honorable Central Body Book. Yes, and then Honorable 𝗁𝗶. Please, can I have a piece of paper so that
Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, I would like to thank the Minister for that brief statement given to us. Honorable Speaker, I want the Minister to further explain why the Ministry of Roads and Infrastructure exceed beyond the approved budget. If I can understand clearly on page 3, where it is stated, similarly, the Ministry of Transport, Works and Infrastructure absorbed 40% more than its approved budget, while the Ministry of Information, so and so. So I want to know why this difference in the approved budget. Secondly, I want the Minister to give us the breakdown of this expenditure, because the way it is, it will be very difficult to understand how these funds were disbursed. Those are my concerns.
Honorable Minister will respond. Serekunda, thank you, and then Kiang Central. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The standing orders is talking about the detailed scrutiny of the monitoring and implementation of the budget. Well, I was just looking at the mathematics, Honorable Minister. You talked about 24% on recurrent expenses and 22% on personal development. could you explain the development expenditure accounts for 22% and 18% of total expenditure respectively? Those two figures, could you explain what that means? So if we take the 22% and then the other recurrent expenditure, you concluded by saying that the total expenditure was 85% of the approved budget. Well, I added 24, 22, 18, and 22 and have 86%. I don't know whether my mathematics is wrong or what is there. But what has happened to the other 15%? It's good to explain. It is also important that we get the real breakdown, because if we say the roads took the sum that is mentioned, which is approximately 2.19 billion. Well, it's the implementation that matters, the detail of the implementation. Which roads, how far? Have we come to 20%, 100%, and what do you anticipate? Because that's the objective. The objective is we are implementing piecemeal. So if we are allocating annually piecemeal, at least we should anticipate that we should get this halfway, three-quarter way, or total implementation, finishing of the project. I think that is important. You've mentioned the subventions. Well, it's good to understand the detailed allocation of the subventions so that we know whether we need to look into this. Because, Honorable Speaker, making this presentation at this time is very timely. And hopefully this will be made a standard submission, because it prepares us to understand what happened in 2021 in anticipation of how to prepare for 2022. So it is important to look at the subventions and see which were the subvented institutions and what is the impact in terms of allocating such huge resources, which the Minister says constitute the top spending items in the budget. So we need to look at that item to scrutinize it to see whether there is value for money. To conclude, Honorable Speaker, it is important to also ask the question. He did mention the issue of the Independent Electoral Commission and the GRTS consuming quite a lot. But I know that the security also covered the elections quite a lot. So how much have they spent on that in terms of security of the elections? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. May I call on the Honourable Member for Kiang Central, but just for all of us to be mindful, so that for equitable distribution of the time, so that everybody, or almost everybody who wants to ask a question can have the opportunity. So let's try to limit our questions to one or two rather than, asking about 3 or 4 questions. Others may want to also ask questions. So let's just bear that in mind. Thank you. Yes, Kiang Central, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, my concerns are in page 4 of the report, where expenditure on vehicles, $291 million. To me, is a huge amount. I want the Honourable Minister to explain to this August Assembly whether there have been purchase of new vehicles, why the amount is very high. And then the traveling expenses that I consider as not a priority also seems to be high. Also, the purchase of fuel and then the lubricant, $228 million. To me, these are high expenditures, so we want the Minister to give us a detailed explanation as to why they are huge.
We respond to those questions raised by the 3 honourable members before we take the next lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. The first question as to the amount spent is higher than what was budgeted for. That is why exactly I came for the supplementary appropriation. When it comes to roads and bridges, we only pay when a certificate is issued. Sometimes the program, as it is programmed, you might program that the implementation for this year, maybe this is the amount allocated. But if the rate of the works is faster than what we expected, then they will have to come and submit the certificates. That is why when we came to the for supplementary application, the additional amount were requested so that we can pay them. There was nothing that we paid that was not budgeted for. In addition to the budget and including the supplementary application, that's where we said initial approved budget and the actual expenditure. That's the difference. That's why we had the additional expenditures. What we do on a monthly basis, on our website, we provide the detailed expenditures on our website and its breakdown. The request that you have requested today for the recurrent example, the 85% absorb and the 15%, we will never release any additional amount unless and until the sector provides the activity report on the release of the fund. Let's say last month you provided your activity report, your certificates, then we release that money. When the activity report is not presented to us, we cannot release those additional funds. This is why sometimes you can see 95% budget execution, 80%. That 20% is withheld because you cannot tell us. You didn't. Sometimes work is in progress and you cannot give us the actual detailed expenditure. And unless and until that work is completed, for you to provide the expenses, we cannot give you additional funds. Even if it comes to the end of the year, we insist on making sure that the funds we give you before, you spend it. If you don't spend it, unfortunately, it has to go to the following budget year. So that's the discrepancy, 85, 90. Sometimes you even see some of the institutions will just provide 40% budget execution. But that's that you will be penalized because the following year, if you come and give us the same activities, it will be rejected through the bilateral because you have to justify why that particular activity was not done the year before. IEC, okay, the subventions, tomorrow we can give you the detailed breakdown of all the subventions. Before midday, we'll provide the write-up and so that we can give it to you. IEC GRTS expenses, yes, we will give it to you. I know that the IEC, we've released 100% of what was budgeted for, including the SAP. Likewise, GRTS, including the media houses. If I remember, they were giving almost 15 million or so. Everything was released to them, and the audit has been conducted to make sure that it was not only released, but the activity was also done. For the security, you have the police, you have the army, you have the SIS. What we do when we release it in one lump sum, and that the particular, like the army, when the auditing is done, they will go and audit individually, the army, the SIS, and the police. The Ministry of Defense, the allocation for the army will go through the Ministry of Defense. The police will have to go through the Ministry of Interior. SIS will have to go through the State House. So when we release it, when the expenses are made, the IFMIS will really generate the report, and we will see how much was spent. We can also provide those detailed expenses tomorrow because the data is already there. The other ones about vehicles, just remember that the vehicles also includes the ambulances. It also includes the ambulances. For the fuel, we can give you the breakdown of all the sectors and how they were allocated. Latest tomorrow, because the data is already there, we will make sure that we will provide all the details. Because it was already in the website. All what we do is to print it and provided tomorrow to the club by midday. Did I miss anything?
Very much. As I said earlier, honorable members, we have to manage the time to give everybody almost an opportunity. And honorable minister also, maybe some of the questions may overlap, so you have to consolidate the answers. So let me allow the honorable member for, sorry, I stopped at Jara's, Kiang Central. Jara West, honorable member for Jara West.
Thank you. Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. My problem here is page 2, where it has been stated that the personal emolument PE increases by 12%.
Can you just ask the question?
Yes. My question here is the increment. Is it due to upgrading of salaries, or it's a salary increment, or there were new employments? That's my question.
Thank you very much. Ilyasa, honorable member for Ilyasa.
Okay, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. My question is, why is that the Minister of Finance did not sign this document to make it more authentic?
But thank you very much for the observation. Yes, 𝗏𝗏 South. Thank you. Honorable member for 𝗏𝗏 South.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. My concerns lies on the page 3. Honorable Minister, my question is regarding the absorption rate of the budget line by ministries, departments, and agencies. Notably IEC, that consume over 124%, mainly on registrations and election activities. I vividly remember diaspora registration and voting was part of the budget line for the 2021, which did not take place. So I expect IEC to make savings instead of going up to 124. Can you give an explanation in regards to this?
Member for Fonyi, is it Kantala? Fonyi Jaro? Yes, please. Jarol. It's Jarol.
Thank you very much. Mine is just precise. I just want the Minister of Finance to help us to know, if possible, on page 3, the contributions to this international organization and ICT infrastructure. Now, if you maybe give us some samples of these international organizations and how much you have spent on them. And again, on these top spending budget line items, I underline travel expenses. I don't know whether I may be right because it coincided with a very tough period, that is COVID, when COVID has controlled this travel movement. So how comes the travel expense of the government went up to this amount? And again, this other one, I just want to contribute on this monitoring. Now, if you can help laymen or lay persons, people in the streets who don't have access to this website, to know how much the budget is being spent by these MDAs monthly, so that it will also help us to share the idea or whatsoever of the budget spending. Thank you very much.
Honorable Minister, you can respond to the 3 questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. With respect to the PEs, there was a huge recruitment of nurses and the payment of allowances to judicial officers. And if you also recall, that 600 police officers were also newly recruited. So that has a direct impact on the PE's budget. In terms of the absorption rate, yes, the IEC, these are expenses that they have to do immediately. That was why when we released the money, when I came back for the supplementary appropriation, it was approved and we had to release it immediately. So their absorptive capacity was really more than 100%. We will take note of these monthly expenses that Honorable is talking about, how we are going to do it. Maybe we'll have a forum in local languages that we can explain to the people how the taxpayers' money is being spent. We will work with the National Assembly to see whatever, because you are right, it's very, very important for the layman in the street to know exactly what government is doing. The travel expenses is both local and international. It's lumped together. We can also provide the breakdown, but it's under the budget line item. Areas, international contribution. The Ministry of Information, they were in areas long time ago, to ITU, the International Telecommunication Union. Actually, our voting rights were virtually suspended. That was why we have to move fast to make sure that normally what we do, we every month, every quarter we release and then we will pay just to put our head above water. The reality is that the amount of organizations that we belong to, there are a lot. Maybe there is a need to revisit and try to rationalize it, because what we spend is a lot, but there's a cost-benefit analysis. Sometimes you can have a contribution of $10,000 a year, and you are benefiting almost millions of dollars from the same organization. So it's like, it's just a token of commitment that they will show that the member countries are also contributing. But when we have already started an exercise to look at the contributions as to the organizations and try to see the cost-benefit analysis. But most of them, our membership is more beneficial than what we are contributing. Basically, that's.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Unless sorry. Honourable Member for Ilyasa was a comment meant for the table of office of the clerk.
Okay.
Yeah, it was not a question. Okay. So we'll take care of that. It's been noted, but it will be handled at the administrative level. Thank you very much. 𝗶𝗁.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and thank you very much, Honourable Minister. Honourable Speaker, the Minister actually, in this statement, essentially is talking about the expenditure on the government local funds. And I was trying to, reconcile to see the revenue side. It will be important to also have the revenue side that was collected, so that you can actually reconcile to see whether there was a deficit in terms of the government local funds. So the question essentially is, what was the corresponding revenue that was generated by the government during that particular period? Because it's actually not shown on the statement, only the expenditure side. So it will be important to actually know, and if there was any sort of a deficit from this, how was it financed? Was it through, local funding, or was it for budget support? So really, it's going to be important for us to know that. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member for Talindi.
Thank you,
Honourable Deputy Speaker, do you have your target? Yes, Talindi.
Thank you very much, Ma. On the Ministry of Transport, Works and Infrastructure, most of your budget lines were spent on road and bridges. Did the ministry have any plan of purchasing bus to minimize the transportation costs that the Gambian people are facing?
Thank you very much. Woolly East.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Speaker, I was thinking that the Minister would give us some kind of special update on the SAP, because it came last. And you've mentioned the security sector as a critical sector. I could remember we put some funds for contingency for the security during the election. And we have some experiences and challenges of the security that were reporting to us. So if you could give us just some information as to how that SAP has been implemented would be interesting to us. Thank you.
Yes, Larikunda Sabiji.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me start with Standing Order 95. 94, 1, which says the Vice President or a minister who is responsible for finance shall at least once during each session of the Assembly make an oral ministerial statement to the Assembly on the implementation and monitoring. And then all what I'm seeing here is more of an implementation than monitoring. Can the minister tell us the monitoring aspect of this? And then my second question is, looking at the paragraph on page 4, paragraph 14, where it reads, meanwhile, absorption for food and food service was 114% for the period and was mainly due to the expansion of the school feeding program under the Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education. I did not remember this Assembly approving an extra during the supplementary appropriation budget for the school feeding program. Can the minister shed more light on these ones, please? Thank you.
Honorable Minister, you can respond to the 4 questions.
Thank you very much. The way we operate is on a monthly basis. Our expenditure is based on the actual revenue received, and we get the information from the GRA and other non-taxes that we receive. So every month, the ministry will sit down with the accountant general. There's a committee set up, and this is how we align it. Again, based on the activity report, the request from the other sectors. So at the end of the year, the reconciliation is already on, and then we will be able to report next time on the actual deficits, because there is always sometimes last-minute figures that are supposed to be adjusted, unaudited. That's the time that we can give you that additional information. Whether we have plans to buy the buses, we provide the infrastructure. We try to make sure that the private sector will come on board. The GTSC is semi-parastatal, or is actually under the Social Security. They have plans to buy additional buses that they can. But for this one, it's a commercial thing, and mostly we encourage the private sector to be on board. Information on the supplementary appropriation. Yes, everything that was approved was executed, but we can give you a breakdown in addition to the information requested tomorrow, how much. But I can assure you, personally, I was monitoring to ensure that the SAP was honored. The items that were for the security and other services, we make sure we don't give a blank check. Even if the SAP is approved, we make sure you're subjected to give us the breakdown, how you intend to do it. If you are not going to spend it immediately, we just don't give you the whole amount. We make sure as you're implementing it, then we will release the funds. That's where the issue of the cash plan can come in, and it's been a very strong and effective monitoring system that we established. That's why at the end of the year, some of them cannot spend all the money, because if you want to tell me you want to take expenses on PEs, that you have some reserves, you want to spend it on travels and fuels, these are things that we reject totally. So that's why sometimes it's not easy to manage the funds, but we ensure that whatever the National Assembly approves, we execute it as planned. The last question links to the food and food service. Yes, it's a very critical element that when the ministry realized that inflation and other factors kicked in, they can suppress another activity that they can forego, because the food and food services are so important that they can request for environment. Through this environment, you can see then they're spending more. But actually, it must be budgeted before you spend. But you have the liberty to look at, even the environment, we look at whether what you are buying from is legitimate, and to ensure that like the food and food services, these are things that you cannot just ignore.
Thank you very much. May I call on the Honorable Deputy Speaker? And honorable members, I'm sure if the Honorable Minister has not exhausted your questions, you can all,
Thank you very much.
We have a list. You can always follow it up. told us that everything is on their website, but the ministry is open. Please, so if they do approach any of the officers, let their doors be open for further clarification. Thank you very much. Yes?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, on page 4, number 13, expenditure on roads and bridges amounts to 2.19 billion. Could the Honorable Minister provide or supply this Honorable House a breakdown of the bridges and the roads? Thank you.
Yes, Honorable Member for Woolly West. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable. Page 3, the top paragraph, where you are talking about top spending ministries. You see, the statement is about giving an idea of how the budget has been so far executed during a particular period. And the objective is to give us the elements to be able to analyze why this is this, why is that is that. For example, if I look at the paragraph, I was expecting that the Ministry of Health would have spent more given the circumstances in which we are with this pandemic in the country. But it is less than all the two ministers. But this is not informative enough, because how did you arrive at 2.83 billion? How did you arrive at 2.76 billion? How did you arrive at 1.6? You know, me personally, I'm interested to know what was spent. What was spent? It's important that this statement is improved next time, so that members, you know, everybody is telling you breakdown. You know, if that was done, the question would not have arisen. Because we are interested to know, and the member for Latrikunda Sabi asked a pertinent question. You talk about implementation and monitoring. The monitoring aspect has not come out in this statement. How were you monitoring? The expenditure of the budget has not come out. The breakdown would have helped us to understand how monitoring was being done.
Thank you. Banjul North.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I think this is a good and timely parliamentary practice, as it further enhances parliamentary scrutiny of the fiscal operations of government. And I believe that this practice is would be one of the best practices that this fifth legislature would be bequeathing to subsequent legislatures. And I only hope that the minister and team are capturing the concerns raised, so that we will get a format that will be very comprehensive in terms of talking about the two-legged thing, implementation and monitoring, as cited by the honorable members. I would want the minister in the breakdown to identify the 40% of MDAs that have absorbed more than 100% of the budget in 2021. And that, of course, we're talking about the monitoring. What has been done in terms of monitoring in that regard? So basically, this is my concern. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Opanyumi.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the opportunity. And let me also seize this opportunity to thank the Minister for providing us with this, explicit report. Honorable Minister, according to the Minister's statement, physical monitoring missions and site visits are also conducted to assess progress relating to implementation of project activities funded by both government and development partners. And I want to know, in the monitoring aspect, if any project happens to be poorly executed, what is the repercussion normally the ministry does to those individuals? And also, in the budget, what we have seen is the Gambia local fund, but the fund being provided by development partners are not being seen in the report. Can you please make us know what exactly?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Yes, the Deputy Speaker, the breakdown on expenses for roads, the data is already there, so we will give you the breakdown. Again, latest by midday tomorrow, all the information will be provided. The appropriation actually is GLF spending. This is why we are reporting. But we have taken note of all the concerns that next time we come, we will be as detailed as possible. The monitoring aspect of it, it's not only the amount that we give out, but our budget unit, physically, they go around to see that what you have programmed is actually happening. They will go as far as, almost they do it on weekends. And a report is always produced. And when we take a look at the report, if we found anything suspicious, we hand it over to the internal audit. The internal audit will conduct their exercise, come back, report. If need be, if there is anything that is illegal, that's when we actually submit the reports to the the police to do further investigation. The breakdowns that you have requested for the MDS breakdown, all of these things, we will make sure that the next report, it will be bulkier, it will be time-consuming, but it is necessary. We attempted to make sure that we capture the highlights, the bullet points, but what you have requested the next time we are here, we will be as detailed as possible, be assured.
Thank you.
Honorable Speaker, part of my question is not being answered by the Minister.
Sorry, one at a time. Microphones were on.
Yes, one aspect of my question is not being answered by the Minister. Yes, the phone being provided by development partners. Why is not being mentioned in the report?
That's why I said that what we have focused on is the JLF. But next time we will be as detailed as possible to make sure all the projects, all the expenses, both JLF and other development partners projects will now be captured in the report.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member for Nyanija.
Thank you very much.
I'm sorry, I just...
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and thank you very much, Honorable Minister. I had some questions, but since they are asked by my colleagues, I just give them. One aspect that I'm interested in, and the monitoring aspect, because there are projects in our constituencies funded by local funds, that's the GLF, approved here. But definitely the way the projects are going, we are not happy with them. We have been questioning every day, especially these roads. So I don't know, what are you doing in the monitoring aspect of it? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Joshua.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, mine is relating to paragraph 12 on page 4. I attempted to do maths on the vehicles and related costs. And when I tabulated, I got 519 million. That brings me to the question that whether the government has intends in any way to reduce this cost on vehicles and related expenditure, having in mind the self-vehicle policy. If you could remember, it was a famous policy here, and here we are. It seems to be gathering dust. What is the government's intention to reduce vehicle related costs? Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member for Bakau.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Minister, page 3 of your statement, you've ranked Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Ministry of Works, and the Ministry of Health as top spending ministries. in detail, can you explain to this August Assembly how these three ministries becomes the top spending ministries?
Honorable Minister, let me take the majority leader's question and then respond to all of the last
Thank you very
questions,
much, Honorable Speaker. Mine is related to contributions for international organizations. I think year in and year out since 2017, we have been grappling with this issue of institutions not paying their contribution to international organizations. And these are put in the budget, and they really know that they are supposed to be paid on an annual basis. What is your ministry doing to penalize institutions and organizations that are not fulfilling these international obligations?
Honorable Minister will.
For the monitoring of roads, yes, as a National Assembly member, if you see such delay in project execution, you have the authority to call our attention so that we can specifically go and do. The monitoring is there, but it's your responsibility to call our attention. And there is always a way that we will make sure that the project execution is done timely. Maybe sometimes the delay might even be from the Ministry of Finance, because if you don't, when we give you $1 million, you come back to request for an additional $1 million, and you cannot provide evidence that you've spent it on the project, we are not going to release the funds. That we are very, very, very strong with that. For the vehicle expenses, Ministry of Finance cannot reduce it. I think we have a joint responsibility, National Assembly member, that when we come for our annual budget exercise, that's when we will. But this time we said it's the ambulances. The ambulances. And right now there is a lot of requests for vehicles, but we have been turning it down to make sure that they are not, they cannot be buying more vehicles. Some of us, the vehicle I'm using is the vehicle I found there since 2017, and I'm still using it. I'm still using it. The top spending ministries, this has been the trend. Infrastructure, health, and education. And I think this National Assembly has been very, very concerned, especially the health and education. I think the last time, not this budget, but the year before, the bilateral agreement we had, giving them a ceiling, but the ceiling was busted by the National Assembly and tell us to increase because of the demand and the justification from the ministry. So these are issues that we have a joint responsibility to see. But infrastructure, of course, is evident that it's been very, very aggressive. And once we sign the contracts, we make sure we pay depending on the availability of funds. I can now recall exactly you were telling us how do we make it very tight, to tell you the truth. That is why the banks are over liquid. The fiscal discipline over the past years, that we have not been going for the borrowing. We have been going down just to make sure that the activities are tied to the revenue that we have. And thank God we have seen the decline, our debt GDP ratio, and other activities that we have a breathing space to be able to spend more on education and other activities. The contribution to international organizations, so Honorable Member, I fully agree with you. What we have been doing recently is to block, to make sure that the contribution to international organization, although it is not fair for us to be blocking because they have the right to buy, but those buyers are no more approved. We make sure that whatever is in the budget for contribution to international organization, you either pay it or you lose the money. That we have been doing that. I think there is a follow-up question from Joshua. So far, if I miss anything?
You missed my question. Madam Speaker.
Remember for Joshua raising his tag, I don't know whether their questions have been adequately dealt with. But you cannot deal, all the questions cannot be adequately dealt with, please.
I just asked one question, which he seemed to have dodged away from. Policy is not the role of the Assembly. And my question was, what's the government policy? And the vehicle policy was championed by the Ministry of Finance. That is my question.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you. Actually, right now, it's being handled by the Ministry of Transport. That's they've been handled. They have the capacity, they have the technical know-how, and actually they have conducted a validation workshop that all stakeholders are involved. They are handling it.
You missed my question.
Bakau?
Yes. I said I need a detailed explanation as to how these three ministries became the top spending ministries.
Because they have been spending what we've given them, and it's approved by the National Assembly. Whatever we give them, is the absorptive rate that they are spending as we are giving them. That's why they become the tech. And if you look at the allocation as to the percentage of the budget expenditure, they are among the top highest. It's about sequencing and what we have been giving them. So they become top spending because we have given them more money.
Thank you very much, honorable members. We've not, yes, we have not exhausted the hour. We still have about 15, 16 minutes more. Yes, honorable member for Opasarum.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Mine is more or less of a comment about the what we expect to get in this kind of statement, a detailed report. I think what we are trying to get at is the budget execution of each of the BEs. That's going to give us an idea. For example, we approve, and each of the ministries actually they report to a particular committee. When we do the budget, sometimes you see a particular committee coming to try to help the ministry defend their own. But oftentimes you will see that we approve a particular amount for a particular budget line, but then the next minute, during the course of the year, they divide that to something else. So this report is also going to help us, because I cannot stand here to defend a particular ministry, give them this money, and next minute they take the money to do something else. So a detailed observation for a BE is going to be very helpful for us, so that we can track what we are approving and what actually is being wired to somewhere else.
Member for Nyani.
Thank you. My question is in page 4. I have seen the amount on vehicle and fuel and lubricants, but now I want to know about the money spent on maintenance and spare parts on vehicles. There's no money indicated on those things.
Thank you very much. 𝗏𝗏𝗃, did I jump you? No, please, can you take new questions first? Nyamina West.
Thank you, Madam. Honorable Minister, in your report, page 4, among the top spending budget line items, you made mention of food and food services, which is very important. And I just want you to clarify to this August Assembly, how was this done? And I'm just interested, was it only on procuring food items, or do you have intention for investment of food production within the country? Thank you.
If we have time, we will get to your class.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yes, we can provide the information on maintenance of vehicles. As we said, the next time we'll make sure we will be as detailed as possible for the maintenance of vehicles, because these are small line items that we can but included the submission tomorrow, we'll make sure is included. Yes, the food and food services, the Ministry of Agriculture, this is purely just for food. It's not for production. And they have plans, including the army, to make sure at least they will have farms so that they can produce what they will be eating. There are plans, but we have to wait. These are technical issues these are things that we want to support. We prefer the rice that we eat is produced locally.
Yes, 𝘁𝗵𝗲.
Thank you so much. Honorable Minister, my question was in connection to the absorption rate, specifically on IEC, which I understand very well. The registration of diaspora was factored in the budget line, and the voting also. This has attracted a budget line, and it did not take place. We expect savings. How much was saved as per compared to the 124% absorption rate?
I provided the very short and precise. Yes, and I saw another one there. Again, precise, and that would be the end, considering the time. Yes, Fonyi Jarol.
Yeah, sorry for coming again, but then I want this to be explicit. Honorable Minister, on these top spending budget line items, you mentioned of vehicles. And these vehicles, if my memory can serve me right, you said it's mainly ambulances. And am I right? If I'm right, you put me. Sure. Now, I would want to know how many vehicles that gives you this total, and how much each vehicle costs, so that we can see the calculation. Because if my memory can serve, you mentioning of ambulances.
No, that's the question. Busumbala, honorable member.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, my issue is on page 3, paragraph 9, top spending ministries. I want to ask the minister to clarify, to tell the Assembly, I'm talking on the point of the people's concern. If you look at Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, there are issues that are pertaining every day, every year, in and out. But this huge amount of money being given to them, and those problems are not solved. Like, I give an example of learning materials, furniture in classrooms. If you go to Ministry of Health, you have problems of CT machines and the like in the hospitals. All right. Is it that you only approve money, but you don't monitor what they spend the money on to be in the best interest of the people, what people need at the right time? Because if you go to hospitals now, this is what people are saying. Material for procurement of all relevant diseases are not available. Schools are there without furniture. But you are giving these ministries to be the most spending ministries every year. Do you monitor what they spend the money for? Thank you.
And I think that will be the last batch.
Thank you very much. For the IEC, yes, we have given them the entire money that was approved by the National Assembly. But we don't do bilaterals with IEC. You instruct us to give them the money. So you also instruct them to come back and report to the National Assembly. We don't have the authority. What you ask us to give them, this we have given 100%. So whatever it is, of course, if it is necessary, we can even come together with them we have evidence that we have released the entire money. But the IEC, we don't have the responsibility to go and audit them. The breakdown, yes, we will try to give you the breakdown. It is true, we've mentioned that the major expenditure item on vehicles are on ambulances. We can provide the breakdown, but how much each vehicle costs, I don't know. because it depends on the mark, the model, the year of manufacture, and many other, because it's a procurement thing that they go through that, and we will try, but every ministry has a responsibility to monitor your activity. What we can do is, based on the activity report, you have requested to buy 12 cartons of drugs. And what you've requested, we have released the entire money. The next time you come back, we ask for evidence. Not only that, but those items of drugs and others, we don't have the capacity to go and do the auditing. We don't do the auditing. What we do is project site monitoring that the budget division does. Actually, we don't even inform them. Periodically, the director of budget can just get clearance from the permanent secretary over a weekend, and they just physically go and do the monitoring. So physical, we do it, and in terms of how much you've been spending, when we go to a site, we will be able to know what we gave you and the state of the, if it is technical, we seek advice from the Ministry of Works. For the top spending ministries, yes, I mean, we will do our best to provide the breakdown. But they are the top spending ministry again, and what we give them, they have been spending more. Basically, that's the whole thing. The absorptive rate, the absorptive capacity, all of these things, depending on how fast they are. From the Ministry of Finance point of view, I want to see a ministry consume as much as possible. I don't want to give you money and you save it for me. I don't want that savings, meaning that I didn't do my planning right. But if you come and submit a budget, we do the bilaterals and I give you the money, I expect you to come back. If you come and tell me you've spent 100%, I will applaud. So that next time you come back, I am convinced that the activities are there and the evidence is there for you to deserve additional funding. That's when we can come and really defend it. But the comment from 𝘁𝗵𝗲 honorable member, yes, we will do it jointly. And most of these environment requests, for the first 6 months of the year, we make sure we don't approve any environments. Very tough. But as January up to June is a policy, and we are so strong with that. Unless it's an exceptional situation where it's a disaster or it's a matter of life and death, these are the things that we can compromise. But as for the past 3 years that I've been in office, 4 years, January to June, we are very strong. We don't approve any environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister.
Point of clarification.
Pardon?
Clarification.
Honorable, we've exhausted our time.
No, it's just clarification.
Just a second. Whether it is clarification or not, if we've exhausted the time, we've exhausted. But I think, just a second, let me check my records. We started at 11:14, so it's 12:07. We have about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah. The Honorable Minister said that this transport company is partially parastatal. It is 100% owned by Social Security. And we've established that, and I hope that that now will start. It is 100% owned by Social Security. It's not private in any way.
I think it was a matter of choice, but I did mention that it's owned by Social Security. When I say partial, I was just trying to see that it's private, basically privately run like any corporate entity. But I did mention that it's owned by Social Security. Maybe it's a matter of choice of one.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister and Honorable members, for the questions that you have asked. And Honorable Minister, thank you very much for the statement. Honorable members have commended the practice, and we hope that it will continue and even improved further for the benefit of not only honorable members, but for everybody. So everybody has a stake in the monitoring and implementation of the national budget. Thank you very much, and you're now released. You may go, because we're made to understand that you have other issues. Thank you. Thank you very much. Clerk, can we proceed, please? Thank you. Clerk.
Laying of papers and report. Report of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee on the Gambia Anti-Corruption Bill 2019 by the Honorable Vice Chairperson of the 𝗙𝗃 Committee.
Thank you very much. Honorable members will recall that the motion for the second reading of the bill entitled the Gambia Anti-Corruption Bill 2019 was moved by the Honorable Attorney General and Minister for Justice on Tuesday, the 3rd of December 2019. The motion was seconded and the debate on the general merits and principles of the bill ensued. Accordingly, the bill stood referred to the Assembly Business Committee for committal. The ABC committed the said bill to the Standing Committee on Finance and Public Accounts, that is 𝗙𝗃, for further scrutiny and to report back to plenary. The committee is here today scheduled to table its report before the Assembly. And once the report is tabled, debated, and adopted, the next stage of the bill will be the consideration stage, scheduled for Monday, the 14th of February, 2022. May I now invite the Honorable Vice Chair of 𝗙𝗃 to table the report of the committee. Honorable, thank you. The report has also been circulated. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to this table before this August Assembly the report of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee on the scrutiny of the Gambia Anti-Corruption Bill 2019, referred to it by the plenary during the fourth ordinary session of the 2019 legislative year for consideration and adoption. During the process, the committee has had extensive consultations with relevant stakeholders and has also made reference to the Gambia Anti-Corruption Act 2012 as well as AU Convention on Preventing and Combating Corruption. In the course of consultations and internal deliberations, the committee critically reviewed each of the clauses of the bill and has made the following recommendations as indicated below. Part 2, Establishment, Composition and Functions of the Gambia Anti-Corruption Commission. 3, Establishment of the Anti-Corruption Commission. The members shall be appointed by the President after consultation with the Public Service Commission. That's page 8 of the bill. A recommendation: the appointment of the members by the President shall be subject to the approval of the National Assembly. The vetting committee shall comprise a representative of 1A, the Personal Management Office, the Bar Association, the majority and minority parties of the National Assembly, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, and two representatives from the civil society organizations. Recommendation: replace C with financial intelligence unit, that is C, which is the majority and minority parties, and reduce representatives of civil society organizations to 1, that is E, instead of 2, to reduce it to 1. Part 3, financial provisions. The expenditure of the Commission. The Commission may apply its funds A, to the cost of administration of the Commission, B, to payment of emoluments, allowances and benefits to members and other staff of the Commission, C, for and in connection with any of its functions under this Act, and D, for the development and maintenance of any property vested in or owned by the Commission. Recommendation: make the introductory statement subsection 1 as shown above and insert subsection 2 below to specify the authority that determines payment of emoluments, allowances and benefits. The emoluments and allowances and benefits of the Commission shall be determined by the Minister in consultation with the Public Service Commission. That is the recommendation. Part 5, offences and penalties. 20, corrupt offers to public officers. A person who gives, confers, or procures directly or indirectly any property to undue benefit of any kind to, on or for a public officer or any other person, or B, promises or offers to give, confers, procures, or attempts to procure directly or indirectly any property or benefit of any kind to, on or for a public officer or any other person, on account of any such act, omission, favor, or disfavor, to be done or shown by the public officer commits the offense of corruption and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 7 years or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years or to both. 21. Corrupt demand by persons. A person who requests, receives, or obtains property or benefits of any kind for himself or herself or any other person, or agrees or attempts to receive or obtain any property or benefit of any kind for himself or herself or any other person on account of A, anything already done or omitted to be done, or any favor or disfavor already shown to be to any person by a public officer in the discharge of his or her official duties, or in relation to any matter connected with the functions, affairs, or business of a government department or public body in which the public officer is serving as such, or B, anything to be afterwards done or omitted, or any favor or disfavor to be afterwards shown to any person by a public officer in the discharge of his or her official duties, or in relation to any such matter as aforesaid, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 7 years or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $500,000 and not exceeding $2 million, or imprisonment for not less than 5 years or not exceeding 7 years or to both. 23. Conflict of interest. A public officer who contravenes subsection 1 or 2 commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of his or her private or personal interest and a fine of $200,000 or imprisonment for 5 years or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years or to both. Fraudulent receipt of property. A person who receives anything which has been obtained by means of a criminal act within or outside the Gambia, knowing the same to have been so obtained, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 3 years or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $500,000 and not exceeding $2 million, or imprisonment for not less than 5 years or not exceeding 7 years or to both. 26. Making the statements or returns. False statements or returns. A person who is charged with the receipt, custody, use, or management of any public revenue or property knowingly furnishes any false statement or return in respect of any money or property received by him or her or entrusted to his or her care, or of any balance of money or property in his or her possession or under his or her control, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $200,000 or imprisonment for 5 years or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years or to both. Gratification by and through agents. A person who A, accepts or obtains, agrees or to accept or obtain, or attempts to accept or obtain from any person for himself or herself, or for any other person, any gift or consideration as an inducement, or reward for doing or having done, or forbearing to do or having forborne to do any act or thing. B, agrees to give or offers any gift or consideration to any agent as an inducement or reward for doing, forbearing to do, having done or forborne to do, or any act or thing in relation to his or her principal affairs or business. And C, knowingly gives to any agent, or being an agent knowingly uses with intent to deceive his or her principal any receipt, account, or other document in respect of which the principal is interested, and which contains any statement which is false or erroneous, or Gambia Anti-Corruption Bill 2019 defective in any material particular, and which to his or her knowledge is intended to mislead his or her principal or any other person, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $200,000 or imprisonment for 5 years or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years or to both. 28. Bribery of a public officer, a foreign public official, or an official of public international organizations. A person who offers to any public officer, a foreign public official, or an official of a public international organization, or being a public officer, a foreign public official, or an official of a public international organization, solicits, counsels, or accepts any gratification as an inducement or a reward for A, voting or abstaining from voting or any meeting of a public body in favor or against any revenue measure, resolution or question submitted to the public body. B, performing or abstaining from performing or aiding in procuring, expediting, delaying, hindering, or preventing the performance of any official act. C, aiding in procuring or preventing the passing of any vote or the granting of any contract, award, recognition, or advantage in favor of any person, or D, showing or forbearing to show any favor or disfavor in his or her capacity as such officer, notwithstanding that the public officer, a foreign public official, or the official of a public international organization does not have the power, right, or opportunity so to do, or that the inducement or reward is not in relation to the affairs of the public body, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $200,000 or imprisonment for 5 years or both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years or both to both. 29. Offense of using of office or position for gratification. A public officer, a foreign public official, or an official of public international organization who uses his or her office or position to gratify or confer any corrupt, unfair advantage upon himself or herself, or any of his or her relation, or associate, or any other person commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $200,000 or imprisonment for 5 years, or both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years, or to both. 30. Bribery in relation to auctions. A person who commits an offense under this section is liable on conviction to a fine of $100,000 for imprisonment of 3 years. And recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years, or to both. 31. Bribery with regard to contracts. A person who, without lawful authority or reasonable excuse, offers an undue advantage to a public officer as an inducement to, reward for, or otherwise on account of such public officer giving assistance or using influence in, or having given assistance or used influence in a, the promotion, execution, or procuring of 1. Any contract with a public body for the performance of any work, the providing of any service, the doing of anything, or the supplying of any article, material, or substance. 2. Any subcontracted to perform any work, provide any article, materials, or substance required to be performed, provided, done, or supplied under any contract with a public body, or B. The payment of the price, consideration, or other money stipulated or otherwise provided for in any such contract or subcontract as aforesaid commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 3 years, or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years, or to both. 2. A public servant who, without lawful authority or reasonable excuse, solicits or accepts any advantage as an inducement to, reward for, or otherwise on account of him or her giving assistance, using influence in, having given assistance or used influence in A. D. The promotion, execution, and procuring. E. The payment of the price, consideration, or F. Other monies stipulated or otherwise provided for in any contract or subcontract as is referred to in subsection 1. Commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 3 years, or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years, or to both. 3. A public officer who, in the course of his or her official duties, inflates the price of any goods or service above the prevailing market price, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 5 years, or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years, or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than 1 year. Recommendation: a fine, duty to report bribery transaction. Who fails without reasonable subsections 1 and 2 commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $50,000 or imprisonment of 1 year or to both. Recommendation. A fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years or to both. 33. Making statement which is false or intended to mislead, etc. A person who makes or causes another person to make to an officer of the Commission or any other public officer in the due execution of his or her office a statement which to the knowledge of the person making the statement or causing the statement to be made, A, is false or intended to mislead or is untrue in any material particular, or B, is not consistent with any other statement previously made by such person to any person having authority or power under any law to receive, require, to be made such other statement, notwithstanding that the person making the statement is not under any legal or other obligation to tell the truth, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment to 2 years or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years to both. A person who A, has made a statement to an officer of the Commission or a public officer in the course of such officer exercising any power conferred by this act, or B, makes any inconsistent statement to any person having authority to or power under any law, other law, to receive or require to be made such other statement, regardless of whether or not the person making the statement is under a legal or other obligations to tell the truth, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment of 2 years or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years or to both. Part 6 rather. Investigation, search, seizure, and arrest. 44. Service of process. Every summons under this act shall be served by an officer of the Commission in the manner prescribed by the laws relating to the service of process, and the person effecting the service may exercise all the powers conferred by the law relating to the service of process. 49. Substituted service. Where the person summoned by the Commission is in the service of the government, the Commission may deliver the summons in duplicate to the head of the department in which such person is employed to be served on that person. Recommendation: the provision under Section 48, Service of Process, should become 48.1. The heading for Section 49, Substituted Service, should be removed and the provision therein will become 48.2. 54. Custody of seized property. Where a movable property seized, A, is liable to decay or deterioration, B, cannot be maintained without difficulty, C, is not practicable to maintain, and which cannot be dealt with under subsection 3, an officer of the Commission may sell or cause such property to be sold at the prevailing market value and shall hold the proceeds of the sale after deducting therefrom the costs and expenses of the maintenance and the sale of the property, pending the production or conclusion of any proceedings under this Act. Recommendation: replace liable with vulnerable in 7A, and also an officer of the Commission with the Commission, and subject the action of the Commission to a court order. That is, the Commission may subject to a court order sell or cause such property to be sold. 58. Legal obligation to give information. A person required to provide information to the Commission but fails to do so commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine of $50,000 or 3 months imprisonment or to both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $100,000 and not exceeding $300,000 or imprisonment for a term not less than 3 months and not exceeding 12 months or to both. 58. Detention and bail. Recommendation: add subsection 7 to establish a detention center. 7. For the purposes of this act, the Commission may establish a detention center for detaining accused persons before trial. Part 7. Investigations relating to financial dealings and property. Property. This is a wrong word, property. I don't know property. Property. Recommendation: the last word should be property. 58. 59. Investigation of shared accounts. A person who willfully fails or refuses to disclose any information or produce any account, document or article referred to in subsection 2 to any officer of the Commission authorized under subsection 1 commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine of $50,000 or to imprisonment not exceeding 1 year or both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million, or imprisonment for not less than 3 years and not exceeding 5 years or to both. 60. Chairperson's power to obtain information. Recommendation: replace chairperson with commission. Part 9. Prosecution and trial of offenses. 76. Prosecution of offenses. Every prosecution for an offense under this Act or any other law prohibiting bribery, corruption, and other related offenses shall be done with the consent of the Attorney General. Recommendation: replace shall with may to allow the Commission to use its discretion. Also replace with the consent of the Attorney General with in consultation with the Attorney General. 79. Protection of whistleblowers and information. A person who gives the information referred to in subsection 1 knowing the information to be false commits an offense and is liable on conviction to a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 2 years. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $100,000 and not exceeding $300,000 or imprisonment for a term not less than 3 months and not exceeding 12 months. Part 10. Miscellaneous. 4. General penalty or offenses. For other offenses. A person convicted for an offense under this Act for which no penalty is specifically provided is liable to a fine of $50,000 or to imprisonment not exceeding 6 months or both. Recommendation: a fine of not less than $300,000 and not exceeding $1 million or imprisonment to a term not less than 3 months and not exceeding 12 months. 89. Duty of confidentiality and oath of secrecy. Every member of the Commission, the Executive Secretary, and every other staff of the Commission shall maintain confidentiality and secrecy of the compliant document, report, and other information relating to the implementation of this Act that becomes known to him or her or comes into his or her possession or his or her control. A member of the Commission and the Executive Secretary shall take oath, the oath of secrecy and due execution of office. Recommendation: make provisions in section 89 of the bill to compel commissioners and members of staff to take an oath of secrecy to guarantee confidentiality. Conclusion. In view of the aforementioned observations and recommendations, the Finance and Public Accounts Committee hereby submits this comprehensive report for the consideration and adoption by the August Assembly. Honourable Speaker, I beg to move. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Vice Chair. Any seconder? Yes, Jara East. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, for giving me the floor. I rise to second the report of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee, FPAC, of the National Assembly on the Gambia Anti-Corruption Bill 2019. And I equally want you to grant me permission to make my contribution. Thank you. Honourable Speaker, thank you for granting me leave to make my contribution on this important report. First and foremost, grant me leave to felicitate the mover for a comprehensive report regarding the Anti-Corruption Bill 2019. Honourable Speaker, you will agree with me that this Anti-Corruption Bill has been a great concern to all and sundry. And perhaps for the fact that it has been presented ably and so comprehensively by the mover is primarily informed by the urgency that the committee attaches to this important report. Honourable Speaker, we were told that members of this anti-corruption will be drafted. The committee will be drafted. And my concern is, Honourable Speaker, has to do with men and women who will be drafted into this all-important committee. Honourable Speaker, lest we forget, corruption has never been a kidney stone in Africa, but always a cancer. And corruption, as we all know, has been with us since time immemorial. Therefore, to nip it in the bud is a Herculean task, which requires men and women of moral rectitude as opposed to turpitude. Honourable Speaker, this is not an ordinary committee that will take care of every Tom, Dick, and Harry. For us to succeed in nipping corruption in the bud, we must have men who care their integrity. We must have women who give priority to their integrity. Therefore, it becomes quite important and challenging. Honourable Speaker, without much ado, the penalties are quite comprehensive, and I think the committee is very intelligent in providing very good punitive measures that will deter would-be people who might be found wanting of corruption. They have provided guards and fences, whereby it will be difficult for somebody who is alleged to have committed corruption to escape the net. And I want to thank the committee for being so comprehensive in dealing with this very important matter. Honorable Speaker, to come to the implementation. To have the commission in place, the committee members in place is one thing, but to execute is quite important. Honorable Speaker, when we have plans, beautiful plans, and we fail to degenerate those plans into executions, they become a wild goose chase. They become futile errands. And I believe fervently this point.
Woolist?
Yes, point of order.
I should allow you.
I have a point of order.
I should allow you.
It's point of order.
A point of order.
What is your authority? No, he has a point of order.
Yes,
I thought he wanted to be listed down.
Honorable Speaker, clause 29 of the standing orders, clause 29(1) says every member shall restrict his or her observations to the subject under discussion. The subject under discussion is the report, not any other thing. And you are going into implementation of conduct.
Won't we call it an open debate? No, I think he can proceed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I think I'm within the guards and fences. Okay, thank you for that observation. Honorable Speaker, this is very important. It has been a burning issue. People have been talking about it. And I believe we have now found a remedy. Gambians have been complaining time without number to have this thing in place. And thank God, today we are lucky to have it. So what is left is now to work assiduously in making sure that we reap the benefits of this anti-corruption. And therefore, there should be no sacred cows. There should be no sacred cows. Because if we have sacred cows, the purpose will be defeated. A rule for one should be rule for all. If that is implemented, I think the battle will be, won. We can all put our heads up for having successfully gone through a very good anti-corruption bill. And I believe this will happen by virtue of the comprehensive nature of the report. Honorable Speaker, to this end, I want to thank the mover profusely for having taken us through this wonderful piece of legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really did not catch where the honourable member went outside of the report, because we will all recall that we had an opportunity at the time to debate the merits and principles of the bill, and that was extensively done. But I think he was within the four corners of the report. Thank you. Thank you very much. I now put the question. It has been moved and seconded that this Honorable Assembly do consider the report of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee on the Gambia Anti-Corruption Bill 2019. Those in favor, please say aye. Those not in favor, please say no. The ayes have it. Now, any honorable member who wishes to take part in the debate can do so. Please raise your tags, but I had earlier on recognized the honorable member for 𝗵𝗃 North. So, honorable members, just raise your tags. Please, table office, can you help me?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Madam Speaker. Many a time that people do cry that in the Gambia we need attitudinal change in order to change the system. More importantly, to change the attitude cannot go without eradicating corruption in the society. If not quickly acting on, maybe the young ones that are yet to be born
will have no choice but to have corruption in our DNA. It appears it is getting into the bloodstreams, and if no concern or action taken to regulate and remedy the situation, as I said, it will get into the DNA of our young ones yet unborn. I have this belief that when the change of government came in 2017 or 16, precisely what the Gambians are yearning for is change of system. And that is very much related to get rid of corruption in the society in all its forms. I have this belief, it is notion that the government of the day prepared this bill and forwarded it to the National Assembly in 2019. And the National Assembly also referred to the relevant committee. People outside the National Assembly were crying that the Assembly is sitting over the anti-corruption bill, as if the Assembly is not taking any concern regarding the corrupt practices in the society. The report has indicated that the committee that is representing the Assembly had actually taken serious concern in going through this bill, intensively did consultation with the relevant stakeholders to make sure the work is properly done, the proper and necessary amendments are done to have a good law. Any law that is a bad law is equivalent to no law. So having the bill before us and then we just take 1 month or so and to pass it, only to be subject to room for more amendments, the belief is that that law will be perceived to be bad laws. I have this belief, this is why the committee took this time to intensively scrutinize the bill and intensively consult to put before us this very important report. The report will guide us during the process of considering the bill and adopting or approving the bill. On that note, I want to seize this opportunity to thank the committee for the job well done. And I have the hope when we consider this bill and then pass, the implementation will also be taken into serious consideration, and the act will not be there to gather the dust. Our society needs change, and that change cannot come in the absence of the fight against corruption in the society. Madam Speaker, having said so, I refer you to page 3 of the report, and that is part 3, about establishment, composition, and functions of the Gambia Anti-Corruption Commission, and particularly on paragraph 4. Under recommendation of that, paragraph 6, 5, or C rather,
the majority and minority parties of the National Assembly. This is drafting. Sometimes it can be interpreted differently by different people who have legal background. We believe in the National Assembly. We have two groups, the majority group and the minority group. That one may not be differently interpreted by different people. But regarding party representation, we have different political parties. I think about 5 or so political parties. Of course, one is majority. Where do we categorize the rest? My belief is there will be minority parties. Here we have many minority parties. We have only one majority party and many minority parties. Having written this in this form, is it your belief that you want each of the minority parties to be represented, or only the grouping, that is majority group and minority group? As I said, we have two groups, majority group and minority group. What my understanding is, we have one majority party, but many minority parties. Are you going to group the minority parties, or are they going to be representing their entity? That is my concern. If at all is the other way, I would prefer to have the two groupings, majority group and the minority group, instead of majority party and minority parties. I think that is my take as far as the observation that I have here. Most of the points are on penalties, augmenting the penalties. I think in order to check the correct practice, one should not be very linear on penalties. The penalties should serve as deterrent to avoid future occurrence, and then these recommendations made by the committee are genuine and are to the points to avoid or to serve as deterrent to committing those offenses. That's my take, Honorable Speaker.
I think that's a valid point. I'm sure the Vice will take note of that. Honorable Member for 𝘁𝗵𝗲.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Speaker, before I depart, let me take 1 or 2 minutes to thank the mover and, of course, the committee for what I would describe as a very, very good job. Taking a look at the report indicated the amount of effort and expertise that was inserted in the report. Mine is kind of a clarification. Taking a look at the recommendations. The recommendations have counted up to 10 recommendations that carry the same amount of proposed punishments. When the committee was doing it, perhaps what did they take into account to determine the number of proposed years for imprisonment and fines? But it appears the severity of offences would determine the different types of punishment. But I've counted up to 10 recommendations which bear the same amount of years of proposed punishments and fines. So I want the committee to further clarify actually whether the severity of offences was put into considerations to make sure the majority of these offences by giving different charges and different proposed years of imprisonments. That's my only observation. But overall, the committee did a very, very good job, and I want to thank them.
Thank you. Honorable nominated member, Seka.
Thank you very much, Ma. I want to commend the mover and the committee for this brilliant report. So for me, the only thing that I have is whatever happens, or if they are caught liable. So for me, I think this report needs sensitization. Because if you look at the way people are talking about corruption in this country, it's severe. Severe in the sense of everywhere you go, there is corruption. Even sometimes, what we've seen as corruption to me sometimes, maybe what can be done to eradicate corruption? Is it this act only? Do we have anything else to do to eradicate corruption? What can the government do for its people? What can we do for each other as Gambians? Because if you look at people working in offices, their salaries are not promising and they are poor. Obviously, something may be done. But what should be done to make sure that corruption is eradicated in this country? Is it this act alone? And when shall we acquaint ourselves with this act? I think, for me, this act is so relevant in the sense that we should look at other means and other avenues to make sure that those avenues will be auxiliary of this act. I think just coming up with this act, putting it before us, sometimes it may not be even implemented. And people don't know anything about it. It's true, ignorance of the law is no excuse. But people should know. Now it is high time for us to come together and make sure that people know. From here, I think we should try by all means, the mover of this bill, to make sure that people are aware. In the local languages, everywhere we go, we talk about this corruption. And if you don't do it, the same thing will happen. How many acts do we have in this country? What is the essence of those acts? It's only when you go to courts, that is when they will say, you have committed crime in the act of this and that and that. So I think we should really try, but slow but sure. Hopefully, these issues will be addressed, because I think that maybe it will be more implemented the next generations to come, but not in this one. But nonetheless, it has started. One step, one giant step. It's the counting of 1,000 miles. So I think I want to comment this August Assembly, and hopeful that the next legislature, when they come, they will be really sincere to themselves. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. Banjul North, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. We have this bill before us. There were similar legislations in the past. You have the ill-fated asset evaluation and recovery of and corrupt practices act in the early 80s, between 82 and 84. It couldn't proceed. We also have the Anti-Corruption Act 2012, which is now before us for repeal and replacement by this bill that is before us. People talk about corruption. But for me, I believe there's ambiguity in terms of corruption. in the sense that there are certain acts that are very difficult to define as corruption. We have this report, by the way. I need to commend the committee for having discharged its responsibility after the committal of the bill to the FPAC. They have done this review and prepared this report, which is before us for consideration. I have some questions regarding the recommendations and the report itself vis-à-vis the bill. But I don't believe corruption is basically our problem. It is partly. I would have loved this National Assembly considering at the same time a bill on reforms regarding salaries. Most of the practices that are considered as corrupt are being run allegedly by those who are at the bottom of the income ladder. If you have such a law, and a civil servant who earns $2,000, $3,000 a month, and then alleged to have engaged in corruption, taken to a court of law, with this heavy punishment, I don't think it commensurates. It's not equal. We would have had before us a bill revising salaries of servants, public servants, civil servants, teachers, police officers, the civil service in general, or even public service, let me put it this way. I believe then we would have been doing justice to the resources of this country that are being pilfered, that are being misappropriated. Because by then we would have justification to come up with stiff penalties for whatever practice we may consider as a corrupt practice, liable for punishment. So this is my take on this bill, that we are doing this in the absence of salary increases. I don't want to name officers who are considered to be corrupt, but for me, they are compelled to do things to earn extra income to support their families. I'm not in any way justifying whatever is considered as corruption. I don't justify corruption. But what we normally see with such legislation is that they eventually end up punishing those that are desperate and then leaving sacred cows. As I said, this is not the first time this is before us. The Evaluation of Assets and Corrupt Practices Act of the 80s and the 2012 Anti-Corruption Act. What has it done? The 2012, the one that we are supposed to be repealing. What has it done in terms of curbing corruption? Nothing, absolutely. So I think having this alone would not address what we call corruption. I am very much opposed to misappropriation of resources. The taxpayers must enjoy the tax that they are paying, and this should be in the form of services, in the form of employment creation. It must come back to them. So any attempt to divert that for private purposes is something that I oppose.
But the person, trying to get $50 here, $100 here, $500 here as fish money, ending up being cut up like this. Of course, it's justice, but you can see double standards. Honorable Speaker, as I said, the committee had done a good job, but what I've also seen missing is, according to standing orders, the objects and reason. The report has not done anything regarding that. I don't know whether they have subjected that to review. Although it's not going to form part of the law, the act, but it's a requirement that something has to be done regarding that. It's good that the vetting committee shall comprise a representative of. It's good that the committee is recommending the National Assembly be removed from there. We cannot be players and referees at the same time. We should desist from being part of the processes of the government. We are oversight. I think this lesson should be learned. We are oversight. I know this was drafted by the executive, but it's very good that it did not escape the National Assembly. We cannot be part of this process because at the end of the day, it has to come before us. And it's good that whoever the appointment, those that are going to be responsible for the commission, the appointment is going to be subject to the approval of the National Assembly. This is best practice. This is best practice. So it's very good that this don't escape them. Honorable Speaker, I've also seen that if you come to page 9, duty to report bribery transactions. 3, a person who fails without reasonable excuse to comply with subsection 1 and 2 commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime. I don't think this adds up. Because the person, you are committing an offense for not reporting, and nothing is accrued to you in terms of resources, in terms of material, in terms of finance, that should be confiscated. So, Honorable Deputy Chair, I don't believe that this thing, to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime, this should be here. I've not seen it in your recommendation. In your recommendations, you are talking about a fine not less than 300,000 and not exceeding. And I've also seen that sometimes the bill is more lenient than the committee in terms of the fines, because they have been talking about 100,000, but the committee has increased it to 300,000 to 1 million. And then this has been repeated on so many crimes. So, that's something that I really want to an explanation on. And of course, there's one thing that I would commend the committee, that when we are making laws, let us not tie the hands of the judges or magistrates. I think this is also good, not less than, not exceeding. It's good for us to be doing that, not less than, not exceeding, so that, the hands would not be tied. You'll have the latitude to at least be considerate. So a similar thing is also on page 9, the last one, 33. Commission offense is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of, and we are talking about making statement which is false or intended to mislead. That act does not amount to accruing anything that is supposed to be confiscated. So it does not apply here. It shouldn't apply here, I believe. Well, the committee, the chair would explain, deputy chair, the vice chair. But I am really concerned about them. I don't see any relations. On 58, detention, that is page 10, page 11, detention and bail, page 36. Recommendation, add a subsection 7 to establish a detention center for the purpose of this act. Detention center, commission being given the power to establish a detention center, to manage a detention center. I believe that this should be left to the law enforcement institutions. The commission would be, I don't know, ultra-biased that they call it, but it is not within their mandate to be running detention centers. We have institutions that are constitutionally mandated, that is the police force, to be doing that. So I don't know why the Commission is given this power to manage a detention center, to detain accused persons before trial. This may be a miscarriage. And on the last page, page 13, Honorable Vice Chair 89, every member of the Commission, the Executive Secretary, and every other staff of the Commission shall maintain confidentiality and secrecy in any, is it complaint or compliant? I've seen compliant there. So, and if this passes, well, I don't know, I need an explanation whether I believe it should be complaint. Of any complaint, document, report, and other information relating to the implementation of this act. Yes, Honourable Speaker, I believe this is my take on the bill. I have no problems with laws intended to curb corruption, misappropriation of resources that are meant for the taxpayer, meant for Gambians. No one should be allowed to divide them to yourself for private use. There should be laws to prohibit such acts and also punishment. But as I said, there is no definition of the crimes and the punishment that are commensurate to such crimes. The public servant or civil servant who asks for $50, $100, I don't think should be punished for that crime by being sent to jail, either to pay $300,000 or $1 million, or to go for jail custodial sentence of minimum 3 years or exceeding 5 years. So this is my problem. So do we define the act? So I have a problem with that. But on the whole, I support the law, the bill, to be enacted into law. But this is not enough. It should have been accompanied by a law that addresses the income of those who are eventually going to be caught up by this law when it is enacted. And I hope it's not going to suffer the same fate as its predecessor or the one that was promulgated in the early 80s. During the PPP regime, just after the 1982 elections. There was only one person who appeared before that commission, and that was the end of the commission. It was there. The law was there. Could not be applied. 2012 Corruption Act was there. It could not be applied. There has not been any case. Well, of course, people were being taken, I know civil servants. In fact, it was being used to coerce them. But you would go to court, economic crime, come back. We want a law that is just, a law that is coming to protect the country, protect the resources, and protect its people. That's the kind of law I envisage, and that's the kind of law that would definitely receive my support. But I have questions regarding this in terms of what commensurates with the act, the punishments and the act themselves. On that note, Honourable Speaker, I thank you for giving me the floor.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Just to address this issue that I think we all, or Honourable Members, had ample time to discuss the principles and merits of this bill, then there is no harm just maybe summarizing just a short preamble on it. But basically, why we are here today, I stand to be corrected, is for us to discuss the report of the committee. Of course, when we get down to the consideration stage, honorable members will have an opportunity to give their detailed recommendations at the appropriate time. Let's just be mindful of that aspect of the procedure that we are to adopt. And on that note, thank you very much. Honorable Member for Serekunda, to have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. The committee was charged to look at the details, clause by clause, and if there is any recommendation, to proffer recommendation for any amendment of the parent bill, and that's precisely what the committee has done. Honorable Speaker, two things need mentioning. That Section 101 of the Constitution and Standing Order 77 of the Standing Orders provide for speedy passing of bills for enactment. And those who bring bills from the executive are given the privilege to be able to do so under a certificate of urgency. So this National Assembly should never be blamed for any so-called delay in the enactment of bills that emanate from the executive. When bills are put before us, Standing Order 69 requires scrutiny, calling of witnesses, and ultimately coming up with a report such as this. The second thing that is worth mentioning is that in the bill, Clause 88 is talking about repealing the Gambia Anti-Corruption Commission Act 2012. So there is an Anti-Corruption Act. So there is no vacuum in terms of a tool to continue to fight corruption by any person in position of authority. So what we are talking about now is an improvement of that law. And it is hoped that that is why they brought the bill for consideration of this National Assembly with the view to improve the law. Corruption must be conceived in a legal sense, not just general sense. Specifically, one must be able to investigate something and be able to prosecute. So the Commission has power to investigate as well as to prosecute. But what you are investigating must be material, and that's why the offense must be established. So the question is, when you say corruption, you must establish the offense or offenses that will characterize the corruption. And then in itemizing them, then the investigation on each item could be done to be able to prefer the charges and eventually to prosecute. So that is the essence of lawmaking. That's what we are dealing with. Not just general terms of a moral issue called corruption. Honorable Speaker, page 3, clause 3, establishment of the Gambia Anti-Corruption Commission. So the committee puts before us that the proposal that the members shall be appointed by the President after consultation with the Public Service Commission is inadequate. That the appointments must be subjected to parliamentary scrutiny. Well, that's an advance. That's what we expect from our committee. That since there is suspicion that the executive rises above the law, nobody could take a president for criminal offense to a court. So that's mighty person given an authority to appoint. So therefore some element of scrutiny is necessary to ensure that the person appointed will have the integrity and will have the honesty and would...
Sorry, Honorable, may I just interrupt you for a while? I would like to take a short break of about 2-3 minutes, and I don't want to interrupt the proceedings, so I have requested the Honorable Majority, because the Deputy Speaker is right now unavailable. I'll be right back. It's about 2-3 minutes. Thank you.
Honorable, you can proceed, please.
The professor of the Standing Order Committee is telling me something is wrong somewhere, but I told him now we must just continue. That once we tolerate something, it becomes the good thing that we can act on to speed up the situation. Yes, Honorable Speaker, the issue here is ensuring that the person who is the head of that commission or members of the commission carry out their responsibilities, all their undertakings on the basis of accountability, transparency, probity, and integrity. And this National Assembly should be able to scrutinize the members. That's what we are being told. I support 100%. Now, prior to the appointment, they should be subjected to vetting by a vetting committee. What is being proposed is that the vetting committee will comprise Personnel Management Office, the Bar Association, the majority and minority parties of the National Assembly, the Chamber of Commerce and Industry, 2 representatives from civil society. Our committee is saying it's a 4-part to talk about majority and minority parties in the National Assembly. That should be out. Rather, they are proposing the Financial Intelligence Unit. Again, let's look at it, whether they are not players, whether in actual fact they should really be given that particular responsibility. I don't know, committee. Yes, there is some element of integrity we are looking for. Could we get it from the head of the Christian Council and head of the Islamic Council? Would that be more neutral and also more morally leaning? And the objective is that we are really fighting corruption to get a better society. Let's look at it. Now, 2 representatives from civil society, how are we going to select them? Could we not be more specific that the Dental Association, chairman of the Dental and chairman of teachers union or some association that we hold there, and feel that they will be professionally inclined and their heads would have integrity. I think it's a choice we can make to get more integrity into the system. That is the objective, because that integrity matters. Now, looking at the financial provisions, I saw a 0.5% somewhere of total budget. Do we see it in the financial provision? Financial provision. That the income they're talking about the commission shall have, let's say, funds of the commission. It talks about such monies as may be appropriated to it by the National Assembly, which should not be less than 0.5% of the national budget. How much is that? Have you spoken to finance and get an indication of the sum of an institution which is not going to be a big one with immediacy? It may take time to grow. But once we make this law, then it means that there must be supplementary allocation. It will have some impact on the budget. And whatever we give them cannot be smaller than this percentage that is being mentioned. So, committee, I would want some, I'm saying that sum, it means that that is the limit. It cannot go less than that. So if there is going to be a supplementary allocation, it means that whatever we give them cannot be less than that by law. So it means that we need to really know what that amounts to and whether we should appropriate such a huge, I don't know whether it's huge or small. But anyway, I would want to know your opinion on that. So it is also, yes, the committee is telling us to specify the authority to determine element. There I agree that we must move in that direction. Now, looking further is the penalties. For me, as long as whatever has been actually looted, to use a crude word, is actually recovered, then what is important is to lessen other penalties and ensure more national service. The important thing is really to ensure that we protect public money and how to ensure that what is taken is recovered is really the equivalent of crime and punishment. So to me, how do we determine that? Other than that, we are just improving on the current law. Since it exists, there is nothing wrong to improve it by the penalties you suggest, as long as the penalties that you are actually recommending could be equated with the crimes committed. And we anticipate which type of people will actually commit the crimes that we have identified. If they commit those crimes, what is likely to be the amount of money they are to reap from the crime? And in that instance, then how do we ensure that we punish that to prevent that crime from being committed? That is really the difficult task that is before us. It's not just simply a moral venture that we are trying to clean up society so that everybody will behave in this way, but essentially how to protect public money, public funds, taxpayers' money, because when it is looted, we go to the hospital, we will not find drugs. We have roads that are dilapidated. You know, you are flown to Senegal for some form of scanning. So when public money is wasted, we suffer. So therefore, the issue of corruption is not just a moral issue. It is how do we ensure that services receive public funds, and when they do, when we go, we see what is needed to get the services needed. That is really the whole trajectory of fighting corruption, is to ensure that what belongs to us as a people is utilized to promote our general welfare. So I would stop there when we go to the close-to-cause scrutiny. I would say that I agree 100% with most of what has been actually the trajectory anyway, that the trajectory is more accountability of the executive to parliament, lessening its powers of impunity. And I will just conclude, Honorable Speaker, with that beautiful provision and recommendation by the committee, and that is at page 12. And this is very important because it talks about prosecution and trial of offense. Look at how it was crafted. Every prosecution for an offense under this act or any other law prohibiting bribery, corruption, and other related offenses shall be done with the consent of the Attorney General. So without the consent of the Attorney General, then you will not prosecute. Can you see the might that you give to a president who appoints the Attorney General? So these were the weaknesses of the past, that you give absolute power to the executive to determine who is to be prosecuted and who is not to be prosecuted. But our committee is saying, no, 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 we cannot move to that trend. It is saying that what is important is to allow the Commission to use its discretion and replace with the consent of the Attorney General in consultation with the Attorney General. It's just simply in consultation. And in consultation, according to the Constitution, you are not obliged to do what the person has actually recommended in the process of consultation. So it depends again on the integrity of the Commission. And the emphasis is on the Commission rather than the chairperson. So yes, we have added value to what has been put before us, and I do support the motion for adoption of the report. And then at the committee stage, we can scrutinize it to ensure that at least we add value to it. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Can we have the member for Kantora? Sir. Honorable Member for Kantora. Ilyasa?
Yes, that is all. Then go ahead, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, for giving me the floor. Although I have a brief contribution, because when I go through the introduction, if you could allow me to say, Honourable Speaker, I rise to table before the August Assembly for consideration and adoption of the House the report of the Finance and Public Acts Committee, APAC, of the National Assembly on the scrutiny of the anti-corruption bill. And when I read this, I even laugh, because the mover should try to tell us what is corruption. What is corruption? And why people are corrupted? And how are you going to stop corruption? That's my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Can we have the Honorable nominated member, Madam 𝘁𝗵𝗲?
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for allowing me to associate myself with the previous speakers. Honorable Speaker, with this report of the FPAC to anti-corruption, I would associate myself with the reference quoted by member for Banjul North and member for Serekunda. This has not been something new in this country. This report, this bill, we have bills here in this country, in the First Republic and the Second Republic. They never move, even from here to the veranda. They are still there. One came in 1982. It comes as a witch hunting. This bill was passed. Then the Attorney General, Minister of Justice, Honorable 𝘁𝗵𝗲 in 1982, the bill becomes ambitious. He introduced this bill. Then as an Attorney General, he was 100% behind the bill. And he happens to be the first offender of the bill. This happened in 1982 in my presence. I have seen it, you all. Maybe some of them, some members then must be very small, also are not aware. 1982, it's about 30-something years ago. So it never, some are not even born. We have seen this, it comes again 2012, we have seen this, we had nothing. It has never moved. Anyhow, when you go to the Committee of Supply, you'll see. But for me, with this, people cry, anti-corruption, anti-corruption. How many anti-corruption people we have? That's the third time. First Republic, Second Republic, and the Third Republic. It will not work. It will not work because I will quote the sample of the FPAC. What is happening about this COVID-19 problems? The scandal all over the world, all over the country, they are all focusing on Gambia. Honorable people, I am dealing with this. No, I'm not out of that. I'm just quoting a reference.
Sorry, Honorable. Yes, what's your Honorable Jarais?
The Third Republic, you have to usher in. Thank you.
What word do you use?
I said the Third Republic is here to usher in.
Honorable Speaker, we have seen this right now on the floor. You have this FPAC dealing with the COVID-19.
People were watching on the TV, newspapers, as what has happened to the COVID-19. The amount, the money that we, the money we approve from here, it's only the small rats they look after $5, $10. They could, in the Gambia here, they call for corruption. But those wangu from the top, the millions and millions of dollars, you will never see an ordinary person whenever the investigation takes place. Those are not the people. It's not the small, the people at the top were the people who were to answer that question. And they were the very people, understand, who knows where the money goes. And they are very particular about this COVID-19 money. Gambia Petroleum. These two are very, 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 very serious.
Honorable, can you please?
So therefore, if we are to adopt this, anti-corruption bill, it should start immediately as what is in our hand now. So I will urge all members to see that, understand. Honorable Speaker, allow me, don't distract my attention.
There's an observation, please. Somebody is observing you.
I'm not seeing, I'm not hearing or seeing.
No, I saw it here. Honorable.
No, Honorable Speaker, I think we have to understand the fact that we are not debating the bill that has been done. We are debating our report. If you have nothing to say about our report, please sit down. If you ask anything about the bill, I'm not going to answer because I'm not the minister. If you have a problem with our report, please come up with that. I will react to that. But if you say anything about the bill, the substance of the bill is not my business. That's the business of the minister. Please.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as I was saying, this is not something new here. All what I'm saying is, the report of, I know it's the report of the FPAC. The chair or the vice chair is not the minister to implement. What I'm saying, understand, we the National Assembly, I said there are issues that are on the floor. I'm not saying that the vice chair or the chair of the committee, understand. I'm talking about, understand, what is my view and what has been happening in this country, and nothing has ever been happened. So why the vice chair to be worried? You are not the authority. I'm not referring to you. I'm talking about the House. You led the report. I'm expressing my view. Who are you to approve this, to say who's to go to court? I know that. Because I witnessed in 1982, I witnessed in 2012. Honorable Speaker, that's what I'm saying. I say there are burning issues now. COVID-19, Gambia Petroleum. If you look at the report, the evidence that are before the whole country, the whole world, we are seeing. So I said, I hope when we adopt these things, understand, we'll adopt it, we'll make sure that, understand, we follow, understand, so that, understand, you know, the authorities will know that it's a concern of the parliament. But not the chair or the vice chair. Who are they? Didn't I know that what are they? They are only your duties to bring the report, but the members also can express their view. You don't have the authority. Honorable Speaker, I beg to move.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much, but I don't think there is need for all that. And of course, you have a right to raise issues for the House generally to take that into consideration, but at the appropriate time. But as of now, as I said earlier on, we're debating the report on the anti-corruption bill. Of course, you'll also have an opportunity when we go to the consideration stage to make concrete recommendations for those provisions to stand part of the bill. And during the adjournment debate, of course, within 15 minutes, the sky is the limit. You are at liberty to say whatever you want. Thank you very much. Kantora.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you very much
for giving me the floor. Honorable Speaker, first of all, I also would like to add my voice to thank the relevant committee for taking their time to do what has been given to them or referred to them by this August Assembly to report back to plenary. Honorable Speaker, before going to few observations that I want to make, I would also like to reiterate or try to buttress for the fact that Gambia has never fallen short of legislations or has never fallen short of legal instruments to curb or to really address issue of corrupt practices in this country. Because as alluded by previous speakers, we are here to repeal an existing instrument, an existing law that has been put in place by our predecessor parliament. And therefore, what is important is that making law is one aspect of it, but to operationalize those legislation, to implement those laws is where the devil lies. So basically, it's important for August Assembly, to take this giant move with the executive to make sure that these laws are put in place. Having gotten a newly found democracy, we also have to make sure that we jealously guide and protect that. Because if you look at the public perception or public opinion on corruption and what's really happening on the ground are two different things. Up till now, don't be surprised that some citizens in this country thought that there is no law, that this law is coming for the first time. And that is why the euphoria of this particular law or bill is being talked of the town, not knowing there are existing laws before coming to effect or before bringing this particular law. But the level of sensitization, the level of awareness of our electorate, that for them to know that there has been an anti-corruption bill or act in this country before coming with this legislation is lacking. That is why it's more talked about. That is why the euphoria is growing. That's why Parliament is dragging it. It's not dragging it. But there has to be a due process, and there has to be also, we must make sure that relevant procedures are followed to arrive at this stage. And knowing that the rationale behind this particular legislation, we have to make sure that the government take a lead role, a center stage in fighting towards corruption. What is important, nationally and internationally, there is no country who is corruption-free. But what is important, what is expected of countries or government is how you react to corrupt practices that serve as a deterrent, that serve as a measures to make sure that it is not taken as business as usual. What is important is this parliament to work in line with the executive to come up with this legislation that will serve as a deterrent, that serve as a caution that there's a law in place. If you do X, Y, and Z, there are penalties for this. So that precautionary mind would also really help in terms of shaping our society. Having said that, I also want to go to recommendation on page 3. It says that members shall be appointed by the President after consultation with the Public Service Commission. So for us to implement effectively this bill, there has to be a commission, an anti-corruption commission put in place. And also I have seen they have further recommended that they want the appointment of the members by the president subject to approval National Assembly, of course. Once you have a commission in place, it must come here as a best practice. But number 6 talks about vetting process or vetting committee. They have identified, they have laid the criteria, they have laid the templates or the guiding principle in which who should it be comprised of. But to my fervent view, I would want them to leave it, those special committee, let the commission be in the, given the responsibility to actually pick up a special committee. We can just say there should be a vetting committee, but its membership, its criteria should be best known to the commission itself, who best they could bring in to make sure that, to vet the process. And also I've seen what you call an FIU, called Intelligence Finance Unit. So I don't know whether you have that in country, or are they talking about the NIA to be replaced, the National Assembly in the picture? I'm not opposed to that, but what I want, that the vetting committee of the commission should be left with the commission itself to establish that, so that they could see what relevant professionals they need who are competent enough, to do the vetting process of any particular accused or case. So, having said that, I don't think I have much more observation, unless the issue of reprimanding section, that is to punish any culprits, the money involved. I also want to raise my voice, whether they have consulted the Attorney General's Department or Justice to see how best these things could be, speaking in line. What is the yardstick they use in arriving those figures they put in place. We're not saying that to go against the process or try to speak ill about the process, but it's about, to understand the grievances. Of course, every atrocity committees should be addressed or should be met with an action whereby that can deter a further reoccurrence of such action as well. We're not opposed to that. But however, we want to also know what are the measurements, what are the instruments they use in arriving at these figures for various crimes or various offenses committed under this particular act. On that note, I thank you so much for indulgence.
Thank you very much. Honorable Jara West.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I equally thank the committee through the Vice Chairperson who presented the report for a very difficult work that was started a long time ago, as we are all aware of it, until finally it comes to the final process. Probably from today, we are now going down to the consideration stage. And my support, in the first place, I want to give that to the report. For what I have read so far, was a difficult work to do. And I also want to understand that corruption is sometimes understood in a different way. But I'm happy to learn from my learned colleague who say, here we are talking about corruptions under the context of law. I think that would make everything easy. When we take to that context, sometimes we define it in another way. You may have corruption in every household. Every individual may be corrupted. But in that context, on public offices, that will help us. My That's one of my concerns. And whenever it is taken to the Committee of the Whole House, it is now becoming a law. From that point, it has to be respected. And I have seen in the report that the Commission should provide a detention center for whoever is in default. And I don't think those things are prepared yet. And by next week, at the end of next week, we're going to adopt this, if members support as I do, and it becomes a law. But the other concern is the level of punishment relating to the level of the offenses that is committed when it comes to corruption. A person accuses of corruption amounting to millions of dollars, for example, and another person accuses of corruption at the tune of thousands in count. I've seen that all the punishments are equal. That's the confusion that I have. And I also want to ask the mover to at least give us a justification for that, why it comes that way. And finally, investigation is very important in the whole exercise. Hence, people are going to be given the opportunity to report on any corrupt practices that they have seen, going by the Act. Then investigation is very important, because it might be used as a witch hunt. So the Commission should have a very strong system of investigation before finally prosecuting any victim. Otherwise, a person may be taken before the law when actually it is a mere allegation. That's my contribution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, before I call on the Vice Chair, okay, Upper Salum, thank you.
Minutes I've been raising my tag during the time of majority, and when you came, I was raising. I thought you recorded it.
I always say we cannot see everybody. That is why I ask whether we still have any honorable members who wish to speak. All I have, my list, the list is already exhausted, but of course I did ask whether any honorable member would want to speak again. Honorable member for Upper Salum, so I will take Willis and then I'll also have you down.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker, and thank you very much, Honorable colleague, for the presentation. I'm a member of the committee, so my intervention will really be very short, and to just bring some clarifications on some of the issues that have been mentioned by some of the members, particularly the member for Kantor.
Sorry, Honorable, I think in that case, let me allow the other honorable members who are not members of the committee. Yes, Central Badibu, thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we have a very important report before us, and kudos to the committee for the job done. Honorable Speaker, this report is they call it as a comprehensive report. Indeed, it's comprehensive, but it entails a lot. And I believe it will help us to have a law that's going to save this country. Honorable Speaker, we all know that corruption is a cankerworm which is eating the fabric of our society. And coming up with a proper legislation will save us financially, and it will help us to make more development to the people that we are representing. Honorable Speaker, this country suffers a lot due to economic exploitation, which could be in the form of bribery and misuse of resources. So the reports address a lot of things from the bill itself, which I totally agree with them. Honorable Speaker, but if you look at page 3 of the report, coming to the members of the Gambia Anti-Corruption Commission, the committee recommended for one civil society representation. I am with the view that the two should be maintained. It could be one male, one female to promote gender parity. I am with the view that we maintain two instead of the committee's recommendation. Honorable Speaker, as my other colleagues made mention, fighting corruption is very difficult. But if we are willing to make a change in our society, if we are willing to steer the wheel for development of our people, it shouldn't be a problem. It shouldn't be a problem. Unless and until we are not ready to go in for it. And we cannot have development, we cannot have a better society, we cannot have a civilized society without having this bill in place. Because this is the time that the economy could be regulated, this is the time that we will be held accountable at the end of the day. This is going to be the time taxpayers will know the value for their money. So, Honorable Speaker, I can conclude by saying that it's long overdue. And I believe with this report will help us to make a law that's going to serve the entire country. I thank the committee once again for the effort done, and I believe all of us are going to give our blessings to the bill when we reach to the other stages. Thank you.
Woolly East.
Okay. Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I also thank the committee for a very good job. I think the report has helped us a great deal to understand what the bill is all about. Honorable Speaker, when it comes to establishment of the commission, I would have thought that the recommendation here is okay to maintain one civil society organization representative as well as FIU. I think this FIU too is very important when it comes to dealing with corrupt issues. My concern is in relation to the augmenting of the fines and terms of imprisonment. I was thinking that the committee should be able to help us to understand the reason why penalties are increased, because all penalties appear to be increased and all in terms of imprisonment or fines. I'm wondering whether the committee has applied any criteria to determine the fines or determine the, I know there is a bracket, but then what criteria is being used? For example, if you look at 24, fraudulent receipt of property. It's saying a person who receives anything which has been obtained by means of a criminal act within or outside the Gambia, knowing the same to have been so obtained, commits an offense and is liable on conviction to the confiscation of the proceeds of the crime and a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 3 years or to both. So the recommendation is a fine of not less than $500,000 and not exceeding $2 million, or imprisonment for not less than 5 years and not exceeding 7 years. So my problem is this: anything can be small, it can be big, it can be small amount or big amounts. And if it is left there like this, how would the courts, maybe the courts will know how to go about it, but then that needs to be explained. So maybe you should be able to help us to understand how you have arrived at this. Also, Honorable Speaker, I want to know whether the different clauses, the different crimes, whether there is any comparison between the different crimes that help them to arrive at the punishment or the penalty. That would be interesting to know what method they have used to come to that. Honorable Speaker, also, I'm thinking ahead. We are trying to deal with corruption. And we know that the possibility of not recovering the proceeds of the crime is there. You can amass billions and then nothing will be recovered. So what do we do with proceeds that are not recovered? If you recover a proceed from somebody and then you, after receiving that, then you give the person, for example, 3 years, or if, or 1 million. If the person amasses, let's say, 3 billion, they are thinking of small money, but we are thinking corruption is big money. If the person amasses 3 billion, and then this law is there, not less than 300,000 and not exceeding $1 million. That's what I'm thinking. How do we, if we leave it like that, I think we need to coach it in such a way that no matter the amount, we should be able to recover. You know what criminals are doing now? Those who are engaged in crime, in corruption, are ready to do anything. They'll be ready to amass billions, then you take them to prison for 5 years, then after the 5 years, they come back and enjoy. And then you will not recover their loot. They will save the billions outside and, put it in such a way that it will be there for their children, even if they pass away. So we need to think of all that. What do we do if we did not receive the process of crime? What do we do? Should we not increase the punishment? If the person hides it in such a way that we could not in any way recover the amount. You come here and approve, let's say, $30 million of project that should go to the rural people for water projects, etc., etc. And somebody amasses all that. Or some people join together and take everything. And then you jail the person 3 years, or he pays 1 million. Is that deterring anything? That is going to encourage other people to say, okay, now I can take billions, or I can take millions, and then they will just give me 3 years, or they'll punish me, I'll pay 1 million out of what I have amassed. So we need to look at this thing more seriously and more closely to ensure that no matter how they go, punishment will always find them there, and commensurate punishment will be there. So that's my observation on that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Honorable 𝗶𝗶 𝗡𝗁.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. Thank you very much, the Vice Chair, and all the members that actually have contributed towards our report as a member of the committee. I'm just going to say very brief things about some of the questions that actually have been raised here, and the rest will be answered by the Vice Chair of the committee. So I'll just have...
That does not amount to a response. Is it?
It's kind of like a clarification on certain things, which, I don't know, I may have some information that he may currently not have, especially about FIU, and that's why I want to handle those ones, and the rest he will handle. I've already spoken to him about that.
I'm just concerned a little bit about the procedure. I'm thinking of maybe a scenario whereby we just call on the Vice Chair to respond. He can just start and allow you, as a member, I'm not too sure whether, because it's okay, let me allow, okay, then go ahead. Before
yes, I'm coming as a member, actually. That's fine. No, it's okay. I think we are in line. Thank you very much. So I just think going to start from the areas of the fines and the confiscations. I think this is something we have extensively discussed as a committee with the assistance of the Attorney General's office. And when you make a comparison with the Anti-Corruption Commission Act of 2012, you will see that there is a big difference in terms of the confiscation part not currently there. So right now what they have essentially is just to take you to court, send you to jail, or fine you. But to confiscate the properties on which you know it's not there. And that's the reason why this one came in to actually correct that area. So now they can confiscate, they can send you to jail, and they can also fine you. But if you compare it before, that was not there. You can be sent to jail, and then you can also be fined. But then at the end of the day, like he said, you may just, after 5 years in jail, you go out and then go enjoy your money. So now this bill is going to actually correct that to ensure that we do the confiscation. Now the other area that the member for Woodley actually has mentioned about, like, you serve your term and then you go out, let's say they are unable to locate these properties. This is exactly where the Financial Intelligence Unit comes in, as they do with terrorist financing, and they also do money laundering, anti-money laundering laws that they actually have. They have cross-border agents. They also have a lot of collaboration with the Western world, where they can actually help to track you, or to track the properties, or to track the funds that you actually have smuggled through this country to somewhere else. That's exactly where their work is going to come in. And that was one of the reasons why the committee thinks it's also important to bring the FIU to be part of the commissioners, because they have a very good knowledge about anti-money laundering and terrorist financing, and also concealing real thefts and all those things there. So that's why we thought it's important to bring them on the commission. Now, in terms of the criteria, where you find a particular amount of money or the prison term, we also had a lot of discussion about that. But what we want to do, our idea was to give the judge a leeway where he can actually decide on the magnitude of the crime and on the behavior of the individual. Because you really don't want somebody to commit a crime, you go to the court and then try to show rudeness or try to show some acts of, that's really very regrettable. So we say, why not we give the judge, a range where he can pick, depending on the magnitude of the crime and also the magnitude of the amount that actually involved to be able to charge you to go for 1 year, or to go for 5 years, or to go for 7 years in jail. And that was really something that the committee actually also thought of. Now, the other area, the member for Kantora also did mention, he was asking about FIU. Actually, FIU is an act of parliament. That is the Anti-Money Laundering and Combating of Terrorism Financing Act of 2012. It was created by an act of parliament, and they are actually working. They used to be under the Central Bank of the Gambia, but now they are on their own. And they do a lot of investigation in terms of assist the identification of proceeds of criminal conduct and the combat of money laundering and terrorist financing activities. So they are really a very good institution that we think should be parted. And another area also they make information available to investigating authorities. They can subpoena the bank because they have a lot of reports coming from the financial institution in this country on a monthly basis or on a weekly basis, so that they can actually track illicit financing that is actually coming into this country or going out of the country. So that's why we thought they are also important to be part of these things. And they also exchange information with similar bodies in other countries as regards to money laundering and financing. So you're going to see that we have another arm in the government that could actually handle that particular area in terms of money laundering, etc., etc. Now, the other area I just wanted to mention was about the member for Kantora, and that's the last part, Honorable Speaker. It's about the vetting committee. The vetting committee actually, the vetting committee actually is vetting the commissioners. So you cannot have the commissioners to be, you understand what I mean? Because he was saying that the commissioner must be left for them to do the vetting. No, we are vetting them before they become commissioners. So I think he was trying to put the cart before the horse. And on the last part, Honorable Speaker, I just want to beg the indulgence of the table office to ensure that we finish this process of this particular bill, because it has been with us for a while. And now we are going to throw it to them to ensure that we are scheduled for us to complete this bill during this session. Thank you.
I'm not sure whether you were here at the commencement, but it's already scheduled for the 14th. I think that's what I read, the 14th of February for consideration. Just make sure that we all read the bill, get our proposals ready on time, and then if we can coordinate amongst ourselves, it will make the process faster, I think. In the absence of any further interventions, as a matter of formality, Vice Chair, just want to respond and wind up. Huh? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. I think I will begin by saying that it is a pity that the minister responsible for this particular bill isn't here, because issues raised, most of the issues raised have to do with the bill itself. In fact, what they should have said when they were debating the bill are the same things they have said today, and I cannot answer those issues. They should be addressed by the minister who brought the bill here. But anyway, unfortunately he or she is not here, so that's it. But then we must understand the essence of a committee work. And when we bring this report here, your duty is to look at the report with a view to improving it and add value to what we want to change. But you come and talk about the bill as if you have never talked about the bill. That's not our concern. We have done that. Our report is what you should look at. Does it respond to your needs? Is that what you expect from the committee? That's the question. But you don't talk about that. You are talking about things like, this is not helpful at all. So, generally, I can put everything together, but I'll take them one by one. The first speaker was the member for Jara East. His concern was mainly about the difficulty of eradicating corruption and also the membership of the commission. He is particularly concerned about that. Who are going to be? What type of people are they going to be? And maybe that's one of the reasons why probably we said that it should be submitted subject to the parliament for approval. I think maybe this is one of the reasons why we have said that. And then we go to the member for 𝗵𝗂 raised the issue of majority and minority parties. I think what is meant by the bill is simply in a parliament where you have majority, which is in government, and minority, which is in the opposition. I think that's what meant here. But in our circumstances, of course, there are many parties here. But if you look at the situation right now, all these small or big parties together are on one side. So that's what you call the opposition. And the majority are supposedly, of course they are not majority, but they are supposed to be in government. But the reason why we have said that instead of that, we should think of something else, because it's like we are going to play two functions there. But we are suggesting that instead of those, we think of FIU. But the member of Serekunda has made some interesting suggestions. So these are all worth considering when we come to deal with it at committee stage. He's talking about, for example, the chairman of the Christian Council, president of the Muslim Islamic Council, president of the Dental Association, things like that. We can think of all that. What we are suggesting is not fixed. We are just making proposals. They can be changed for better. And I'm sure we can still have something better than what we are suggesting. So it is up to us to think about all this when we come to committee stage and do what we think will serve the interests of the people of this country. I think that is what is important. You see, this is the difficulty. The member for Wuli was grappling with it, is the difficulty. How do you determine the penalties? What criteria do you use to determine the weight of the penalty, the conviction? Like the member for Serekunda was saying, it's not a moral issue. It's an issue of law and crime. Crime, in one sense, determines the nature of the corruption. What type of crime committed will determine what is the type of corruption that has been committed, and what is the type of punishment that should be meted out to that type of corruption. This is what we have been grappling with. But it's not true that everything is the same here. There are some cases where you say 300,000 or 500, 3 years and not more than 5 years. And then you have 5 years not exceeding 7 years. And then you have 3 months not exceeding 12 months. We have all that here. So, and in some places you have 500,000, no, 1 million, not 500,000, not exceeding 2 million. But in another case you have 500,000 not exceeding 1 million. So it is not the same, and that was our difficulty. Like, for example, the crime that is supposedly maybe committed outside the Gambia, and or anything, for anything that is taken. That anything is infinite, it's not defined. It can be anything, it can be like what you say, billions. And that is why there, the punishment is bigger than anywhere else, if you look at it. That's why you have 500,000 or not exceeding 2 million. But it's difficult to say how much, what type of punishment you have. Like, you are talking about these international crimes, like the drug cases we have here. The Bonto one is in billions and billions. What type of punishment are you going to say for those people if they were caught? That's the issue. But is it up to us to determine that? We are just trying to help to shape things to become better and refiner. But that is not our responsibility to sit here and say, you must be punished 12 years. No, we are basing ourselves on what we are giving, and we are helping to shape that to become, in our thinking, better. And the whole purpose of these sums here is just meant to deter. You know, law is not just meant to punish people, you know. Law is also meant to rehabilitate people, to make people become better. In fact, the whole concept, the whole philosophy behind any serious law is to help the person concerned to become a better person. Not to kill him or not to make him worse. Because the more punishment you inflict on a person, you keeping somebody in prison for a long time under hard conditions, you are making him inhuman. Particularly given the type of prisons we have here. So the whole purpose of a law is not only to punish, is to deter, and those who are caught to help them become better persons when they come out of prison. But if those conditions are not created in our situation here, nobody will convince me that there is anything in prisons which is helping anybody there to come out a better person. No, there is not. So in fact, we should be thinking of things like that, that prisons must not just become destroying people, but they are there to help people to become better, to even regret what they have done by virtue of what happens to them in prison. That's what the prison should be about, but that's not what they are here in this country. Anybody who has been to Mile 2, you spend even 1 hour there, you come out a dehumanized person. You know that. Even if you have never been in prison there, if you go there just for a few hours to see what is happening there, that's what you will see. So, that is our difficulty, but it's not that we are, somebody was implying that we are very wicked by saying those type of things. And then, well, this answers the member for 𝘁𝗵𝗲 𝗡𝘁𝗶cie. And then, of course, the nominated member says something which we have always said here. You don't just make laws and put them there. People must know. If you make a law here and nobody is told about the formation or the making of that law, it has no purpose. So it means, particularly this particular law we are talking about, people must be sensitized, people must be informed about the enactment of, yes, there was one, but this is supposedly an improvement on that one, 2012 one. This is supposed to be an improvement on that one. This is supposed to become even stronger in helping to deter corruption. But unless people are sensitized, it becomes useless. We make laws here, but nobody knows about it. Even some of us members, we should also take the responsibility. Once we make an enactment here, when we go back to our constituencies, we should tell our people, we have made a law, this is on this, it is on that, it is on that. It is our responsibility to do that, to our populace, to our electorate. That's our responsibility. If we don't, because if we depend on this radio and television here, they will never be informed about any law that is being made here, because they don't talk about it. They don't inform. The purpose is to have a whole program. For example, once this is enacted and is consented to by the president, there should be a whole television program with panelists to talk about this and make it accessible to the population in the language they best know. You know, this is, you know, let me just continue, because before somebody starts attacking me here again, but we are committing crimes here ourselves without knowing that we are committing crimes. Yes. I won't answer some of them because my friend has already dealt with them. Madam, essentially, I think in a nutshell, these are some of the issues for me I can answer. The rest, that's the responsibility of the minister. You don't like the bill, you should have said it. Some of them are saying, by implying what they are saying, that we should just throw this into the bill. When you were intervening before on this, that's what you should have told the person who brought the bill here. But you didn't say that. Even if you said it, you are repeating it. To me, the committee is not ministers, we are not ministers here. We are trying to see what the minister has brought here, whether this responds to the needs of our people, whether this is going to be an oppressive law or is going to be a law to better what we think is bad. Is this law capable of eradicating corruption? The fact that a law was made but was never applied does not mean that another law cannot be applied. 2012 one, who knows about it? Who knows about the 2012 Act? Many people don't. I would say almost 90% of the population don't know anything about it. So this one is also being made in the process to repeal that one. But then, this must be made known to the people. That's what I'm saying. But it doesn't mean that we should not make a law because it can never be applied. Some are saying, I know, I'm not going to name any, there are people here in this assembly who think that corruption cannot be eradicated in this country. They are saying that this is useless. Forget about this, who cannot deal with corruption here. Members of parliament are saying that. How can they help anybody outside to understand the essence of dealing with corruption as an evil to society? It is not that people are badly paid. It is not that people have low salary. That's why there is corruption. That's not true. There are millionaires, billionaires who are corrupt. It's not money, small money that makes you corrupt. Big money makes you even corrupt, more corrupt than anything else. So, but people are trying to tell me, our teachers are paid low, nurses are paid low, and therefore you have to do. How can you do that? How can you say such a thing? Money is nothing. It's not money that makes my character. So we should not, as legislators, we should not say such things. Because it means what we are just helping people to become corrupt. Because you receive a small salary, you can be corrupt. You have to go, like somebody said, I was a big person said that in this country, where you tie a goat, that's where it survives. Huh? So that has been, everybody has become a goat. Wherever they are, they say, I'm the goat here, so I must survive. So we have a good society. The philosophy behind
Let's wind up.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Vice, and thank you, honorable members, for all your contributions. I'm sure the committee will probably reconvene and take those things into consideration. And on that note, I would want to put the question. Oh, sorry. Yes.
This 0.5% of the budget to be allocated to the Commission. The committee reflected on it. In fact, it was an oversight. We said it should just stop where they said allocation made by the Assembly. The other one should be out. That was what the committee is recommending.
Thank you once again. May I now put the question, be it resolved that this Honorable Assembly do adopt the report of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee of the National Assembly on the Gambia Anti-Corruption Bill 2019. Those in favor?
With amendment.
Pardon?
With amendment. We are just amending this one he just
with?
said.
Yes, with, I'm sorry, yeah, it was my omission, yeah. The report of the Finance and Public Accounts Committee on the Anti-Corruption Bill 2019 with amendments as proposed by honorable members and confirmed or accepted by the chairperson who tabled the report. Those in favor, please say aye. Those not in favor, please say no. The ayes have it. Once again, thank you very much. And the next stage, that is the consideration stage of the bill, is scheduled for Monday, the 14th of February, 2022. And I recall the honorable member for Upper Salem pleading for the process to be expedited, but I think it depends on the honorable members because it has already been scheduled by the table office there. I think they've done their job. So you do your coordination, you're on the ground, and then the process will be faster. Now, honorable members, the next item on our order paper today is the report of the joint committee, that is the PEC and FPAC. But I think it's getting to 3 o'clock, 2:45. Maybe this may be a convenient time for us to suspend the sitting for lunch and prayers, and we come back at 3:30 for continuation. That hopefully we'll be able to finish that report before 6 o'clock today. Thank you very much, and on that note, the sitting is hereby suspended till 3:30. Thank you very much. We hardly use the